Hey squad, it's LB back here with another controller review. Today we're going to be reviewing the ROG Raikiri Pro Controller. This is a new Pro Controller that was meant to compete with some of the top players in the game, being the Elite Series 2, the Scuf, aim controllers, and some of the other ones in the space. And I'll tell you right now, yes, it does compete. But if you're getting this controller for Xbox and you're excited about customizing it and utilizing this controller to its fullest extent, then you're definitely going to want to stick around because there are some important things that I have to tell you before you buy this controller. With that said, I'll be walking you through what this controller has to offer you through its features, specs, and functionality. I'll also share with you the pros and cons that I found while using this controller. By the end, hopefully I armed you with enough information for you to make an informed decision for if this controller is going to be the best for you, or if you should save your money and spend it on some other life luxury. And most certainly, if you find any value in this video whatsoever, please hit this like button, share with your friends, subscribe, hit the notifications if you want to see more like this. So getting straight into it, like many other Pro controllers in this space, this controller is compatible with Xbox, PC, and some mobile devices. It can be used wired and wirelessly. However, it is only capable of being used wirelessly with a PC. To be used with an Xbox, it has to be wired. Aside from that, it does come packed with some solid, unique features that makes this controller stand out as a solid competitor. And looking at the quality and design of this controller, at first glance, it's obvious that this isn't your standard Xbox design controller. Yes, it has a functional OLED screen on the front. I'll get to that in a moment. But as you look closer past that and the carvings in the faceplate, you'll see that there's some quality detail that they actually put in this controller, as it isn't just a mod or skin over the standard Xbox controller. You'll notice on the faceplate, the right side is translucent, and you'll notice on the left side, it's more of a smoke tint, with the ROG initials and the logo subtly displayed. They also lasered in the texture grips on the handle, meaning that you don't have to deal with rubber grips peeling off over time or getting gross and sticky. While on the back of the controller, you'll also see there are 4 additional buttons that can be mapped to just about any button on the front. Just above the back buttons, you'll notice 2 switches. These are your trigger stops. You have 2 positions. You have standard and you have short. These are essential for FPS games where milliseconds really matter when you're in a gunfight. Then right in between the back buttons, you'll notice a hidden compartment right here. This holds the USB adapter, making it a lot harder to lose. This is the adapter that you'll use when you want to connect to your computer with the RF connectivity. RF is short for radio frequency, and this is just another wireless way of connecting your controller to your PC. And at the bottom of the controller, you'll notice that you have the standard 3.5mm jack where you can plug in your headset. And next to that, you can see that they added a mute button. This mute button is perfect for if you need to mute your mic when you don't have an inline mute button. This mute button also functions as a pairing button for Bluetooth. At the top of the controller, you'll notice that it has a USB-C port. This is used to charge and obviously make a wired connection. And on both sides of the USB-C port, you'll notice 2 buttons. These are used to navigate the OLED screen. With that, let's dive into the features and functionality a little bit more. With the OLED screen, it serves 6 functions. The first function being profile. Here, you're given 4 profiles, meaning that you can customize and save 4 unique profiles for the controller mapping and swap between those depending on the game that you're playing. Next is the wallpaper. You can adjust between the 4 given wallpapers that ROG gives you by default, or you can actually go into the system and customize these when you connect it to your computer. But I'll get into that shortly. Next, you have status. This shows a quick snapshot of what profile you're on, your battery life, what your controller is set to, PC or Xbox, and what wireless connection you're using, whether it be Bluetooth or radio frequency. Next, you have your system settings. This is where you choose if you're connecting to a PC or Xbox. If you're connecting to a PC, you can choose from any of the 3 options, Bluetooth, RF, or wired. And like I said, for Xbox, you can only choose the wired USB connection. And fifth, you're going to be able to adjust your screen time off. This is simply a setting to dictate how long it takes for your screen to go to sleep after your last input. And last, you're given the option to adjust your screen brightness of the OLED screen on the controller. Diving a little bit more into the connectivity, I mentioned you can connect to Xbox, PC, and mobile. some mobile that is. As I found, you can only connect to mobile Windows devices or Android devices, and obviously the ROG Ally. But something important to note is that if you're trying to connect this to any Apple devices, you'll probably see it show up, but you can't make any connections. If anybody's had experience with this and actually got their controller to connect with their Apple device, I would love to know in the comments below. The next notable feature I want to talk about here is sound. It has a built-in DAC, digital audio converter. What this is meant to do is enhance your audio and make the gameplay sound a little bit more immersive. Then you have the battery life. The battery life is rated at 48 hours. I'm sure this is with everything else turned off and just using it bare bones, but that still is a pretty solid battery life. And the last feature that really makes this controller unique and makes it compete has to do with the extensive customizations that you can do, including remapping your back buttons, adjusting your joystick sensitivity in dead zones, adjusting your actuation sensitivity with your hair triggers, altering the vibration of your controllers in all 4 points, customizing the OLED wallpapers, and of course, you can adjust the RGB lights and animations. Getting into the performance and ergonomics of this controller, it felt very natural and familiar in my hand, as it's basically identical to a standard Xbox controller. It actually felt a little bit more natural than the Elite Series 2 because I didn't have to worry about the paddles on the back. The paddles on the back kind of mess with your grip with the Elite Series 2, and you got to get used to that. And as I had to wire this into my Xbox, I didn't have any issue with responsiveness. I don't yet own a gaming PC, so I wasn't able to test the wireless experience here, but I'm sure that if you're a fan of the standard Xbox controller, the feel would be second nature to you, and it would be a comfortable controller to use with your PC. Like I said, the controller felt very natural in my hands, even with the back 4 buttons. However, the ergonomics of the back 4 buttons weren't really there, as only the bottom 2 felt ergonomically sound to me. The other 2 at the top were kind of hard for me to get with my middle finger, as I had to really kind of cramp it to press it. I found it easier using just one finger versus using all 4 fingers to rest on the buttons in the back. That's really what I prefer when using the Elite Series 2, and why I like it is that I don't have to take any of my fingers off the triggers in the back. But with this one, I felt I only could use my middle finger, so I had to switch between the top and the bottom when I want to actuate them, which in the long run kind of messes with things. It's going to take milliseconds off of actually getting to those buttons when you're in a gunfight. But if you're young and with those fast fingers, it probably won't matter much. And maybe, depending on the grip and the size of your hands, you might be able to get 4 fingers to rest comfortably on the back, and you don't have to worry about moving your fingers. But if you have to move them, then you're going to have to take into account that things are going to be slightly slower and less efficient if you're using that one finger. Let's get into the details of how to customize this controller. First of all, you need to download the companion app, and that's the Armory Crate app. It only works on PC. Like I said, it doesn't work on anything Mac, so I had to download it on my Surface Pro Go, which actually has Windows 11 on it. And yes, if you look for this app within the App Store, you'll see it on iPad, but it's actually not made for this controller at all. And since you can't connect the controller at all to your device, it's useless. But once you get it connected, you can see that you can make a lot of cool adjustments. You can adjust your triggers at the start and end points for the actuation to be between 0 and 100%. You can do the same thing with your joysticks by adjusting the dead zone, which is where you give the interior a little bit of slack, and you typically use this when you're developing stick drift. You can also adjust the outer threshold. I haven't quite thought of a use case for this, but it is nice to have the ability there if you need it. You can also invert the directions of your joysticks. So any flying simulation fans, you can definitely do that here if it's not available in the game. And what I felt really made this controller stand out from the pack when it comes to customizations is that you can adjust your response curve. You can utilize any of the presets similar to the Elite Series 2, but they give you the additional ability to actually fine tune these response curves to your liking. Next, you can adjust the strength of your controller's vibration in each corner. Then you can adjust the rear buttons, and you can remap each of those to be any of the front facing buttons. Keep in mind, this controller doesn't come with any of the back buttons pre-mapped, so you're going to need to do this if you want to utilize them. Then you can adjust your RGB. Obviously, this is pretty unique to this controller, but you can do some pretty cool things with adjusting the animation of your RGB and of course, adjust the color. Then you have the ability to adjust your wallpaper. You can utilize any of ROG's presets, but you can also add your own with some basic animation presets. After using this controller for a little bit, I developed a list of some pros and cons. Let's start with the pros. First, I like the self-storage for the dongle. I think this is great, especially if you're going to be looking to sell your controller or give it away in the future. It's going to be less things to look for in having to find that USB adapter. Next, I like that it had 4 back buttons. This is extremely helpful when you're playing FPS games because really the more buttons, the better. Additional buttons are extremely helpful when you're playing FPS games as there's so many things that you can do and you don't want to move your fingers from the joysticks for one moment. And like I mentioned before, I really like the customizations, and in particular, the buttons and the stick sensitivity. Aside from being able to remap the back buttons, I think it's a huge plus to be able to adjust your sensitivity curves with even more precision. Then I like the audio enhancement that they added to the headphone jack. This isn't something that they had to add, but it's a plus that they did to help those with connected headsets. Also, I like that they have a physical mute button. This can be helpful for those that have headphones or OEMs that don't really have an inline mute button. And this can be great for console streamers that need to mute the game chat while they're talking to their stream chat. I like the 48-hour battery life, but I wasn't able to really test it myself because in order to test this wirelessly, I would have to use it on a PC. And like I said, I don't have one. So if anybody's been able to test the battery life with this controller, please let us know your experience in the comments below and let us know. Does it hold up to the 48-hour battery life? I don't know. I would think that would hold somewhere near it, but I do like the potential longevity. And I like the connectivity versatility. Even though I can't really use it on the Xbox front, it's very cool that those options are available for those on PC. I feel most controllers are able to connect via Bluetooth, but it having the ability to connect via radio frequency with the USB adapter makes it so this controller has a more reliable wireless connection. We all know Bluetooth can be very unreliable at times. And last, I really like the textured grips. I think they felt good, and it eliminates any concern for having to utilize your warranty for rubber grips peeling apart or just getting sticky over time. And it keeps your controller looking fresh. Now for what I didn't like so much and what you would call cons. My number one biggest con with this controller is that it's not an Xbox controller. It's designed for PC first. And even on the box, they promote this as an Xbox controller, but really if it was an Xbox controller, I should be able to use wireless connection with this controller, not just wired. It's very misleading as an average consumer would assume that you can use this controller wirelessly when you say that it's certified for Xbox. And obviously, that's clearly not the case. And second, I'm not quite understanding why this controller couldn't connect to a Mac via Bluetooth. Just about every other Xbox controller that I have that's capable of doing Bluetooth will connect to my Apple devices. And on a similar note, I didn't like that the companion app was only available on a PC. I'm of the school that if an app or secondary component is needed to fully utilize your product, then it needs to be made more readily available, not just on one operating system. Not everyone has or is going to have access to a PC to just update their controller to utilize it fully. And that leads me right into my next con, where none of the back buttons are pre-mapped. As you'll see when you navigate the OLED, you'll have 4 profiles. Each of these, in my opinion, should be mapped to 4 unique layouts of the back buttons versus back buttons just totally being unusable out of the box. Or they should at least add another option to the OLED where you have the option of customizing your back buttons and having one less need of going through the app. And once you're in the app, it's awesome that the back buttons can be remapped, but only the back buttons can be remapped. The Elite Series 2 allows you to remap just about every button on the controller. I feel that if I'm in the app, I should be able to customize everything about this controller, including the front buttons if I need to. And some of you may be wondering, why would you want to alter some of the front buttons? Well, in some games, you don't have the settings that you want, so you can totally customize it into your own and play it the way that you want to play it. And while we're on the back buttons, I didn't like the way that they were placed. They totally weren't ergonomic, and I felt I couldn't easily use all 4 buttons in the back. The next con has to do with the OLED. It's a pain to navigate. In my initial engagement with the screen, once the screen fell asleep, I had to restart the controller to activate the OLED again, watching the whole animation of the wallpaper and again navigating to where I needed to be. This was needlessly tedious. And another con within this con is that it's useless to go through the system settings to choose if you're going to connect to a PC or Xbox. When you connect to an Xbox, it automatically goes to that setting. So it's completely useless to say that I'm connecting via USB into an Xbox here. You should only need to choose between Bluetooth and RF 2.4 gigahertz connections here if you're connecting to a PC. The other con is I didn't like that it didn't have any interchangeable joysticks or D-pads. I feel for most Pro controllers at this level, you're getting those options. I shouldn't have to worry about getting any third-party components like control freaks or anything if I wanted to extend the height of my joysticks. It's also very helpful to have a quad directional D-pad as an alternative. And another con came from a thought that I had that if the screen went out on the OLED, I'm not quite sure how you would actively adjust between profiles or connectivities. I had the screen go out on me briefly, but I just need to restart the controller and it came back. But this is what brought that thought up. And my last con is kind of what I was just talking about, is the price point. The price point is $169.99 for this controller. The non-pro version that's wired and has 2 paddles is available for $99.99. I think this is the reason why I have so many cons with this controller. They seem nitpicky, but for viable competitors, a lot of the features that I mentioned as cons are available in those controllers, like interchangeable joysticks, pre-map buttons, little to no dependence on the companion app, and they're able to be connected wirelessly to your Xbox and to Apple devices. And like I said, there's a non-pro version that's wired and has 2 buttons. As I can only use 2 fingers and I have to play Xbox wired anyway, why am I paying an additional $70 for this Pro controller? The $100 controller seems like a way better deal, for me at least. As for my final verdict on this controller, I think that is a fine controller. If you're a fan of the rear button layout and it actually works for you, and you're gaming on a PC and mobile and the wireless connectivity options really stand out as something that you want and need, then I think it's an excellent controller for you, even at the $170 price point. But if you're in a similar boat as me and you don't have a PC, so it gets difficult to download the app to make the adjustments that you need, and you're looking to also utilize this wirelessly with just your Xbox, this controller is priced too high. Like I said, it lacks some of the simple key features that could clearly set it apart from its predecessor and put it more in line with some of the Pro controllers that it set out to compete with. In my opinion, I feel I could save $70 and be just as happy, if not happier, as that $70 saved is really the cost of a brand new Xbox controller. Again, these are just my thoughts. What are yours? Whether you're a PC or Xbox player, are there any features or functionalities that really stood out to you that make you want to get this controller or leave it on the shelf? Has anybody already picked this up? You love it or hate it? Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all your support and thank you for watching.